Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today, I want to take the time to once again round up some of the most recent information from the past week in the event that you've missed anything or been a little too busy to keep up to date on everything. We've had some information surrounding trials and competitive crucible play from an interview with Lars Bakken, some more information surrounding the long-awaited PC beta for Destiny 2, and some other snippets of information from various outlets. So here's all the most important information in one place. If you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated, and be sure to comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Now to begin with, let's start with the PC beta information. For the PC gamers out there, those of you that have perhaps been holding out for your chance to try Destiny 2, or for those of you that already played the beta on console and just want to go again, then you don't have too long to wait. August 28th is when the PC beta kicks off. Rather conveniently, that is the day after Gamescom. So if any of you guys are planning on attending that, then you can sleep soundly knowing that you'll also be back in time to dive into this. Now, August 28th is the early access date, so that'll of course only apply to those of you that have pre-ordered Destiny 2 and got your PC beta code. Meanwhile, for everyone else, still on the fence and just looking for a chance to try before you buy, then August 29th is when the open beta begins. So there's only one day in it, and then it'll all come to a close on August 31st. This of course means that when the beta does come to a close, we will be a mere 6 days away from Destiny 2's launch, which is insane, unless of course you're on PC, in which case unfortunately you have to wait a little bit longer. But more interestingly, and the main reason I brought up the beta stuff in this video, is that the content will be ever so slightly different. You will still be playing the Homecoming story mission, as well as the Inverted Spire Strike. You'll also be able to test out the new competitive Crucible mode countdown on the Midtown map. However, what's new is that the control game type will instead take place on a new map called Javelin 4. Now, it's not clear at this stage whether the map we played on during the console beta will also be present and this will simply be in rotation, or whether Javelin will be the only control map. Based on the post alone, they didn't list the other ones, so I'm thinking it may well be the case. So on the content front, there is one new thing to experience. However, on top of that, since what we'll be playing will be a slightly different build, there will be some more subtle gameplay tweaks. At the end of the last beta, there was a lot of feedback, especially surrounding things like the super inability economy, the power or lack thereof from our primary and energy weapons, and even the heavy ammo economy. As it just so happens, the beta build we played was already a little dated, and by the time we were diving in, they'd already changed a lot of stuff. But if you have a chance to jump into the PC beta, then some of those changes will be present. To quote the Bungie blog post, they said, the PC beta will also include evidence of some additional tuning of the player experience. We've answered feedback on how often you have access to power ammo or your super abilities. These changes will be subtle. If you're on board for the console beta, see if you can detect them. If this is your first dance with Destiny, be sure to tell us how it feels. So hopefully what we get to test in a few weeks will be a little closer to what we could expect Destiny 2 to feel like on September 6th. Now, if any of you guys out there want to know what the recommended and minimum specs are for PC, I will link the previous week's blog post down below. Scroll down there and it lists all of these specs that you need to know. One other thing worth calling out, and in truth this won't affect a huge number of you unless you plan to make content on the PC beta or stream it, but they did say that due to their cheat prevention systems they have in place, there's a chance that they'll interfere with some of the communication and streaming apps. What exactly does this mean? Well, it means that things like Shadowplay or OBS game capture, like direct game capture, those sort of things might not work. Obviously we won't know for sure, and sometimes these issues vary from person to person based on your setup, but capture software like that directly detects the game. The workaround for this, of course, is to use things like screen capture instead, since that focuses on like the screen as a whole and not specifically the game. And as for communication, it may well interfere with things like Discord or similar apps, but again, until we actually get to jump in, we won't know for sure. They did say in the blog post that these interferences should be minimal, but they did also call them out, so it's something to be aware of. Anyway, with the beta information out of the way, let's move over to talk about Crucible. In a recent interview with UK newspaper Daily Star, Lars Bakken spoke about some of the changes, the possibility for 6v6 in the future, trials, and a few other things. So let's start with trials. Obviously at this stage, since they haven't officially announced it, details are still a little vague. If the leaks and rumours are to be believed, then trials will likely be returning as Trials of the Nine, but again at this stage that is still unconfirmed. The first question got straight to the point. So you've reworked Trials, which is now 4v4, how does that change the dynamic? To which Lars replied, Trials is different. I'm not going to talk too much about any of the nuances and what's different, but it's coming back, and the biggest change is 4v4. Well, there are other changes too, but I believe people will be blown away when they see the Trials stuff. I wish I could talk more about it. Now, of course, That in itself is pretty huge. I mean, Trials of Osiris, as we know it, is Destiny's most competitive mode. Coming around once a week, putting players into a 3v3 elimination style game mode where you rack up consecutive wins in order to net yourself the best prizes, it can get pretty intense. Of course, throwing 2 more players into the mix, turning that into a 4v4 formula, will heavily alter the dynamic. To a certain extent, we've already had a taste of what this might feel like, since Countdown is an elimination style mode. And while the objectives are vastly different, the underlying play is somewhat reminiscent. So if you were a fan of that mode in the beta, then you'll probably like Trials. I, for one, am super excited to see how it's changed. Now, while I am myself more of a PvE player, and my visits to the Lighthouse have more so been out of curiosity than, say, a weekly ritual, if it does still end up leaning more towards the 9, then I'm going to be super interested to see what story implications that brings to the table. But moving on from there, the interview then moved on to ask about some of the larger games, 6v6 Clash or even 6-person Rumble. And quite simply, Lars replied with, "It's gone," or "They're gone." Basically, rip 6v6. He said that at this point it would be very difficult to return to a 6v6 format since the entire Destiny 2 PvP experience was built around a 4v4 model. He did clarify that it's not impossible, it's not something they couldn't do, but since so many of the new systems are reliant on this new format, it would be pretty difficult. So I personally think it would be nice if at some point, maybe not a launch or even the first DLC, but at some point in the future, if they did loosen things up a bit and perhaps roll back in some 6v6 modes, just for say even the casual or quick play modes. But I can understand that at launch, they are going to want to focus on their new format, so that's the only stuff we're going to see. Finally, the interview then went on to ask about esports. Since 4v4 is a more competitive format and Bungie has a history in esports, is this a direction we can expect Destiny to go in? To which the answer was that they will have to wait and see. Players are typically the deciding factor on whether or not they want to pursue something in an esport. For sure, the new format is designed to be more competitive, and in that vein, it is entirely possible it could go down that route. But if you follow esports, then you'll know that it's ultimately down to the player base. If you find it competitive and they pick it up and drive it forward, sure, it's something Bungie can help support, but they also can't just push the game out the door and say, yep, it's an esport now, because, again, that relies on player support. So in short, it is something that they are potentially interested in, provided there is interest in it, if that makes sense. Now, outside of that, a few other bits of information. First up, remember the turbines at the end of the first mission, Homecoming? Well, apparently they are being nerfed. Where there were previously 2 turbines in the final game, there will only be 1. Half the challenge, I suppose. I appreciate if you are just getting started and you're getting used to jumping. Perhaps this might have been the first time that you died. Maybe you died a few times, but it wasn't really that difficult. I appreciate Bungie are trying to straddle the line whereby they welcome players new to Destiny, whilst also providing plenty for us existing fans to do, and of course if your first mission kills someone a lot, maybe it's not the most welcoming experience, but I do hope this isn't going to be a running trend. Anytime something is slightly difficult, it gets nerfed. After all, challenges make us a better player. Moving on from there, in IGN's Q&A a week back, the one that rounded out their IGN first coverage, most of the questions weren't that exciting in truth, as is often the way in Q&A segments, since all the juicy questions never really get answered, so they also don't ask them. But when asked whether Destiny 2 would have a theatre mode for people to make videos, they said that there won't be one, and they're not sure if the sword glitch will still work since a lot of systems and code have changed. For those of you unfamiliar, the sword glitch is what people use to make machinima-esque videos. You could perform a certain action whilst holding a sword to hide your weapon, giving you a completely clear screen, which is great for making videos. If this isn't present in Destiny 2, however, then things will be a little more challenging. But while they were talking about this, and on the topic of swords, they did say there will be many types of swords. I actually did a video way back when the gameplay was first revealed on some of the new swords that we've seen, so I'll link that down below if you missed it, but we've already seen like a knight-looking broadsword, samurai-style katanas, and even more Fallen or Cabal-inspired swords that look like they're constructed out of scrap metal. Swords are probably one of my favourite weapons in Destiny, partly because they also pull you out into third person, which then allows you to see your Guardian in all their glory. So, more of them will definitely be awesome. In fact, different classes even seem to wield them differently, at least based on the footage we've seen. In addition to this, they confirmed that there will not be multi-passenger vehicles, so even those huge tanks we saw in the trailers, despite their size, if they do indeed end up being things we can drive ourselves, it'll for sure only be a one Guardian deal. So there better be multiple, otherwise you're going to have a fireteam battle on your hands. And then finally, to round out the video, just a clarification. If you follow any of the Bungie folk on Twitter, then you likely already saw this, but for the avoidance of doubt, this image cropped up earlier this week on the official Xbox website when they announced their new line of controllers. Reading through it implies that Destiny 2 will have split-screen multiplayer, but very shortly after this, it was taken down and Deej clarified that is not the case. So if you saw this and suddenly thought, sweet, I'm going to be playing split-screen with my buddies, that is not the case. Multiplayer in Destiny will only ever be online, so if you want to party up, you're going to need your own console and not just 2 controllers. So split screen is not happening. And that, my friends, is pretty much it. That is a roundup of the most interesting information that surfaced in this past week. We're now a couple of weeks away from Gamescom, so expect there to be some sort of Destiny 2 presence there. Given the proximity to launch, I don't imagine it'll be anything drastically new, but even if we got a new trailer, that could be pretty cool. I think there's a live action trailer on the way at some point, so perhaps they'll show that soon, but either way, I'll be out there myself, so if there's anything important, I will have you guys covered. Until then, thanks very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.